Be careful, someone planted a hidden camera. The whisper was soft, but in the silence of Julian Cross's home office, it struck like a gunshot. The bourbon glass in his hand trembled. He turned sharply toward the doorway, where Naomi Brooks stood 29 years old. Posture straight, face calm, eyes steady. Julian blinked once, twice. "What did you say?" Naomi swallowed, her voice low but unwavering. "Someone planted a hidden camera in this room, sir." Julian set the glass down slowly. His office, his sanctuary, felt suddenly alien. The glow of the desk lamp cast Naomi in warm light, but there was nothing warm about the chill creeping up his spine. "Explain," he commanded. "I noticed it behind the sailboat painting," she said. There was a faint red blink. "I scanned it with my phone. It's transmitting." Julian stared at her. "And why would you have a scanner app on your phone?" A tiny hesitation before she answered. "Because I learned, in the homes I grew up in, that cameras show up where they shouldn't." He felt the truth in her tone. But before he could respond, a sharp gasp cut through the room. "Oh my God, Julian." Alicia Ward, his fiancée, stood behind Naomi. Her hand pressed to her chest, pale and trembling like she'd stumbled into a nightmare. "What is going on?" Alicia's voice quivered. "Naomi, why would you say something like this?" Naomi turned, startled. "Ma'am, I'm only telling him what I found." "You found?" Alicia's voice cracked. "Julian, she's threatening me. She's been acting strange for weeks, watching me, following me in the hallways. I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to seem dramatic, but..." She choked on her breath, tears rising. "I'm scared." Julian stiffened. Naomi froze. "That's not true. I wasn't..." "You came into the guest room without permission," Alicia accused, trembling. "You went through my makeup drawer. You were in our bedroom wing last night. I told Josephine about it." "I was cleaning," Naomi protested. "You were snooping," Alicia cried. "Julian, this is how people set up blackmail. I've done stories on this. They plant fake evidence and pretend they're trying to help." Julian felt the room tilt. The air thickened with tension as Josephine appeared in the hall, drawn by the raised voices. Behind her, the chauffeur and 2 kitchen staff lingered, whispering among themselves. "She's been odd since she got here," one muttered. "Always lurking in the shadows," another said. "Maybe she planned something," someone whispered. Naomi's cheeks burned. "I didn't do anything wrong. I found the camera." "That's convenient," Alicia snapped. She stepped closer, her voice trembling with righteous offense. "You expect us to believe you just happened to notice it? You've been watching me, haven't you?" "I would never..." "You liar." Alicia's hand flew before anyone could stop her. The sound cracked across the room. Naomi's head jerked sideways. A red mark bloomed on her cheek. The kitchen staff gasped. Josephine covered her mouth. Even Julian went still. Naomi didn't cry, didn't speak. She simply lifted her hand to her cheek, breathing carefully, as if steadying something fragile inside herself. Alicia turned to Julian, her voice small, wounded, trembling. "You brought her into our home, and now she's accusing me of spying on you." "Me? You know what kind of stress I've been under with the wedding and the press. Why would she do this unless she wanted something?" Julian's jaw tightened, part anger, part confusion, part guilt. "Naomi," he said slowly, "why would Alicia need to spy on me?" "I don't know," Naomi whispered, "but the camera is real." Alicia broke into tears. "See? She can't even explain herself." Naomi met Julian's eyes. For a second, the world went quiet. She looked at him with something raw and earnest, something she rarely let anyone see. "Sir," she said softly, "I'm telling you the truth." He wanted to believe her. Something in her gaze, steady, unflinching, pulled at him. But the room was filled with murmurs, with Alicia clinging to his arm like a frightened child. Alicia sobbed harder. "Why would she do this to us? What if she's dangerous?" The weight of the household's eyes pressed on Julian like a verdict already passed. "Naomi," he said, voice clipped, "step back." She did. "Sir, I said step back." She froze in place, hurt flickering in her eyes before she hid it. Alicia wrapped her arms around Julian's waist, face buried in his chest, trembling. "You believe me, right? You believe me?" Julian exhaled hard. Too hard. The breath of a man choosing certainty over doubt, comfort over discomfort. Yes, he said finally. I believe you. Naomi blinked once slowly. A single, stunned moment where something inside her cracked. Alicia clung tighter. Naomi stood alone. Julian turned on her. How dare you accuse my fiancé? How dare you bring this chaos into my home? You have been here 3 weeks, and already you're creating trouble. Josephine was right, you crossed boundaries. You should be ashamed of yourself. Naomi swallowed, eyes glistening but held back by sheer will. I wasn't lying. Alicia scoffed. Of course you were. Pathetic. Naomi's chin trembled, but she held firm. The camera is behind the painting. Whether you believe me or not, it's there. Julian's glare hardened. Enough. Leave. Naomi opened her mouth as if to say something, maybe to beg him to check, maybe to defend herself, but then she lowered her head. Yes, sir. She turned and walked away, her steps steady even though her world had clearly collapsed. Julian pulled Alicia closer, murmuring reassurances. The staff drifted away, whispering. Josephine lingered a second longer, her eyes following Naomi as she disappeared down the hall. And when the house finally fell quiet again, Julian looked at the painting. A faint, almost imperceptible blink of red glimmered in the dark, but he didn't see it. Not yet. Not until it was too late. If this story moved you, hit like and drop a comment with where you're watching from. Someone near you might be watching too. Julian Cross spent the rest of the evening in silence, alone in his office, staring at the sailboat painting. The room, once a symbol of control and order, now felt like a theater of betrayal. Alicia had gone to bed hours earlier after a glass of wine and gentle sobbing into his shoulder. She hadn't said much after Naomi left, only that she just wanted to feel safe again. Julian had promised her he'd take care of it, but now he couldn't stop looking at that damn painting. The image of Naomi's face as she was slapped played over and over in his mind. Not because of the slap itself, though that had been jarring, but because of what she didn't do. She didn't flinch. She didn't retaliate. She didn't even cry. She looked like a woman who had seen worse. Julian sighed, walked to the wall, and stared at the frame. It was Alicia's idea. She had insisted the office needed something warmer. A piece of color to break up the rigid lines of his world. He remembered how excited she'd been unboxing it, how he hadn't questioned why she'd hung it herself. His hand reached for the edge of the frame. No. He stopped. If he took it down and found something, he'd have to accept that Naomi was telling the truth. And that meant Alicia was lying. That Miles, his friend, his CFO, might be implicated. Too, he'd caught a whisper in Naomi's words before. It wasn't just the camera. It was what it was recording. He wasn't ready. The next morning, the household moved with artificial calm. Julian sat at the head of the breakfast table, untouched eggs cooling on his plate. Josephine placed a carafe of coffee in front of him, her movements efficient but clipped. She hasn't come down, she said quietly. Julian looked up. Who? Naomi. He nodded once. Josephine hesitated. You were harsh last night. Julian said nothing. She's not like the others. Others? Josephine's eyes narrowed. The ones you cycle through when you get uncomfortable with someone noticing too much. Julian's fork clinked against the plate. That's not fair. It's not meant to be, she said simply. But it's true. He leaned back, irritated, defensive. She accused Alicia of spying. Do you know how serious that is? Josephine met his eyes without flinching. Maybe the question isn't why Naomi said it, but why she believed she had to. Julian didn't respond. Julian Cross spent the rest of the evening in silence, alone in his office, staring at the sailboat painting. The room, once a symbol of control and order, now felt like a theater of betrayal. Alicia had gone to bed hours earlier after a glass of wine and gentle sobbing into his shoulder. She hadn't said much after Naomi left, only that she just wanted to feel safe again. Julian had promised her he'd take care of it, but now he couldn't stop looking at that damn painting. Naomi. She froze. He walked toward her. Can we talk? She stood still, her hands tightening around the basket's edge. I shouldn't have spoken like that, he began, or let anyone put hands on you. That wasn't right. She said nothing, but you need to understand what you accused Alicia of. I didn't accuse, she said quietly. I reported something. Julian sighed. I know what I saw. Looked bad. But Alicia was scared. No. Naomi turned toward him, her eyes fierce despite the calm in her voice. She performed scared, Mr. Cross, and you applauded. Julian's face hardened. That's enough. No, sir, it's not. She placed the laundry basket down slowly, carefully, like she was setting a line she wouldn't cross again. I don't know why you hired me, she said, but I know why I stayed. Because this house, cold as it is, felt like a place where rules mattered. But if the truth only matters when it's convenient, then I was wrong. He stared at her. You asked me yesterday why Alicia would need to spy on you. Naomi's voice lowered. I don't know, but someone does. And if you're not interested in finding out, then you're not the man this house thinks you are. With that, she lifted the basket and walked away, her back straight, her dignity unshaken. That night, Julian didn't sleep. The words echoed through his mind like the tick of a clock winding down. If you're not interested in finding out. He poured himself a drink and returned to the office. The painting stared back. He stepped toward it, hesitated, then reached up. The frame came off with a gentle pop. Behind it, nestled in the drywall, barely visible under the wiring, was a lens, small, cold, blinking red. Just as she said, Julian's throat went dry. He stared at it for a full minute. Then he sat down, and for the first time, he allowed the thought to fully form. What if Alicia wasn't the woman he thought she was? He opened his laptop and began checking the security logs. Naomi's name didn't appear anywhere she wasn't supposed to be. No late-night entries. No violations. But Alicia? She had logged into the office Wi-Fi 5 times while he was gone on trips when the house was supposed to be empty. And the guest room camera? Julian followed Naomi's steps, opened the vase. Another transmitter, tucked behind the silk flowers. Something in his chest snapped. He remembered her words. She didn't accuse. She reported. She was right, and he had humiliated her. He looked up at the office ceiling. At the painting. At the place where his life had been quietly recorded. Julian stood, the room spinning with guilt. The maid he had doubted had told him the truth. The woman he was going to marry might not even be real. Julian Cross sat in his office chair long after midnight, staring at the 2 tiny devices lying on his desk. One from behind the painting, the other from the vase in the guest room. Both identical, both transmitting, both proof. He leaned back, ran a hand through his thick, graying hair, and exhaled through his nose. The silence in the room was suffocating, not peaceful, but tight, coiled, like something waiting to snap. His phone buzzed. A text from Alicia. Can't sleep. Are you okay? Want tea? He stared at the message. Seconds passed. Then he placed the phone face down and stood up. Julian didn't sleep that night. He spent the early morning hours combing through the house, the guest bathroom, the upstairs hallway mirror, the study lamp. 3 more devices, each hidden with surgical precision, each quietly collecting pieces of his life. He went to the security system interface, scanned for anomalies. Naomi had been right. There were unregistered data spikes during times Alicia was supposedly out, transmissions that didn't match with his company's surveillance systems. And then he saw it. One of the files buried under a different name had been exported via an external device, plugged in, used, and removed 2 nights ago. He clenched his jaw, and just like that, doubt, real, jagged doubt, sliced through what was left of his faith in Alicia. That morning, Alicia floated into the dining room wearing her silk robe and her signature soft smile. She kissed him lightly on the cheek, her lips warm but his skin cold. Did you get any sleep? She asked, pouring orange juice. A few hours, he said. You seemed tense last night. He said nothing. Alicia looked at him with wide, innocent eyes. Is it about Naomi? Julian set his cup down, the clink sharper than he intended. Let's not talk about her. She reached for his hand, soft fingers curling around his. I just don't feel comfortable with her in the house anymore. He looked at her. Why is that? Her expression faltered for a millisecond. Not enough for most people to notice, but Julian had built companies from the way people blinked. He saw it. She scares me, Alicia said softly. You saw how she twisted things. You saw how she looked at me. I was just trying to help, and she made me into the villain. Ugh. Julian pulled his hand away. She blinked, wounded. Why are you looking at me like that? He stood. I have a meeting. She tilted her head. On a Sunday? He didn't answer. Instead, he walked to the east wing of the house quiet, far from the chatter of the kitchen, and knocked gently on the door to the staff quarters. No answer. He knocked again, then opened the door slowly. Naomi sat cross-legged on the bed, not startled. She was fully dressed, her suitcase open on the floor. You were leaving, he said. I am, she replied. Julian stepped in, closed the door. You were right. She looked up, unsure if she heard correctly. There are cameras, he said. 5 of them. And I checked the data logs. You didn't plant them. Naomi's jaw clenched. She didn't gloat. Didn't say I told you so. Instead, her voice was almost weary. So now you believe me. I do. Too late, she said quietly. He sat down on the nearby chair. Naomi, I made a mistake. Naomi exhaled. Frustration and weariness layered in the sound. I need to know what Alicia's doing, he said. Why she's recording me. Who she's working with. You noticed this before anyone. That matters. Now it matters, she said. But when I told you, I was crazy. He winced. You're right. Naomi looked at her packed suitcase, then back at him. I'm not going to stay here and be your secret weapon, she said. Naomi exhaled. Frustration and weariness layered in the sound. I need to know what Alicia's doing, he said. Why she's recording me. Who she's working with. You noticed this before anyone. That matters. Now it matters, she said. But when I told you, I was crazy. He winced. You're right. Naomi looked at her packed suitcase, then back at him. I'm not going to stay here and be your secret weapon, she said. I don't want to be your backup plan just because you're scared of the truth. Julian leaned forward, his voice lower. I don't want to be scared anymore. That's why I'm asking. There was something raw in his tone. Not vulnerability, Julian didn't show that, but fatigue. A man who had built an empire and now saw cracks forming in its walls. A man who'd been played and knew it. Naomi studied him. What exactly do you want from me? I want you to stay, he said, but not as a maid, as someone who knows what she's doing, as someone I trust. Naomi's eyes flickered. That's not a word you get to throw around anymore. He nodded, accepting the hit. Help me figure out what's going on, he said. Help me stop it, and then you can walk away and never look back. Naomi was quiet for a long time. Then she stood, walked over to her suitcase, and zipped it closed. I'll stay, she said. But not for you. For me. I need to see this through. Julian nodded once. Fair. Oh. She opened the door. And Mr. Cross? She said, turning briefly. Yes. I don't take orders anymore. If you want my help, you'll have to earn it. He gave a ghost of a smile. Understood. As she disappeared down the hallway, Julian exhaled deeply. Something had shifted. The lines were redrawn. Naomi was no longer a maid. She was now the only person he could trust. By Monday morning, the house moved with a new kind of silence, not the elegant hush of wealth, but the dense, quiet tension of a place where truths had begun to rot beneath the surface. Naomi stood alone in the pantry, her sleeves rolled up, hands scrubbing a porcelain bowl out of habit. Not because it was dirty, but because movement helped her think. The same hands that once folded bedsheets now tapped into satellite signals and scanned hidden frequencies. She had grown up surviving on observation, learning early how to read lies written between smiles and warnings hidden behind compliments. People always thought silence was the absence of sound, but Naomi had learned silence often had a shape, and right now, this house was speaking volumes. Julian entered the room quietly. He wasn't in a suit. That was new. Dressed in jeans and a navy sweater, he looked less like a billionaire and more like a man forced to step outside his comfort zone. May I? He asked, nodding toward the counter stool. Naomi didn't answer. She rinsed the bowl, dried it, and finally turned. What's the plan? She asked. Julian leaned forward. I want to start with Alicia's devices. Her laptop, her phone, the burner she probably keeps hidden. She's smart, but she's not subtle. Someone's helping her. Naomi raised an eyebrow. You want to do this yourself? I thought you could show me how, he said. Teach me what to look for. No. Naomi stared at him, amused. You're a cybersecurity CEO. You built systems used by the Pentagon. And you want me to teach you? He smiled faintly. I built the fort. But someone used my own gate against me. I'd rather work with someone who spotted it when I didn't. She studied him for a moment, then nodded. Fine. First, we need access to her devices, and I need to know her schedule, when she's alone, when she's not. I can handle that, Julian said. She has brunch with a network producer at noon. I can keep her out till 2. Perfect, Naomi replied. I'll work fast, but I need gloves and time. Julian stood. You'll have both. At 11:53 a.m., Alicia exited the mansion in a beige trench coat and oversized sunglasses. She blew a kiss to Julian before stepping into the black Range Rover waiting at the front. Julian watched her leave, the smile on his face rigid, rehearsed. Once the vehicle disappeared around the bend, he turned and walked briskly inside. Naomi was already moving. Wearing latex gloves and a hair tie snapping tightly against her wrist, she entered Alicia's private suite with careful precision. She scanned the room. Everything was pristine. Too pristine. Alicia's space felt like a showroom meant to be seen, not lived in. She moved to the nightstand first. Drawer 1 jewelry, perfume, 2 prescriptions under a different last name. Drawer 2 lipstick, receipts, a thumb drive labeled press pack. She pocketed the drive and moved on. Next up, the walk-in closet. Naomi tapped the mirror lightly, watching for distortions. Nothing. But in the third cabinet, behind a stack of designer bags, she found a slim black pouch, zipped shut. Inside, a disposable cell phone, turned off but warm. Naomi smiled to herself. Got you. She photographed the serial number and returned everything exactly as it was. Then, laptop. Alicia always left it charging in her office nook. Naomi booted it up, bypassed the lock screen in less than 2 minutes. Encrypted folders. Multiple aliases. A folder titled Press Photos. That, when decrypted, opened into a spreadsheet, marked with columns, dates, times, private meetings, and names. Julian's, Miles's, a few others. Her heart picked up speed. The spreadsheet showed timestamps, recordings, transfers. Some files were marked with 3-letter initials, likely foreign companies or intermediaries. But one name appeared again and again. M. Stroud. Naomi paused. Miles, she whispered. She copied the data to a clean drive, closed the laptop, and stepped out. By 6 p.m., Alicia returned, carrying shopping bags and laughter in her voice. You should have seen the look on his face, she told Julian in the foyer. Like I just pitched him the moon. I swear, sometimes men in media think they've invented charm. Julian smiled. Glad it went well. She beamed. We should celebrate tonight. He nodded. We will. Upstairs, Naomi was already analyzing the files in her room. She'd worked quickly but thoroughly. Now she sifted through exported videos and audio snippets. Most were mundane Julian on conference calls, or discussing board meetings. But one stood out. A video file dated 2 weeks prior. She played it. Julian stood in his office, speaking on the phone. She doesn't need to know about the Dubai deal yet, he said. I want to move the capital before she starts asking questions. Naomi sat back. The voice wasn't Julian's. The accent was off, slightly too smooth. AI? She scanned the waveform. It was a synthetic clone. Someone had built a voice profile and spliced together fake conversations using Julian's voice. Her chest tightened. They weren't just spying on him. They were preparing to replace him. She jumped up, grabbed the flash drive, and walked to the east wing. She didn't knock. Julian looked up from his desk. That was fast. Naomi's expression was hard. They're not just stealing from you. They're preparing to impersonate you. I found a synthetic audio file with your voice, talking about moving assets secretly. Julian's face drained of color. They're setting you up, she said. He stood. How long do I have? I don't know. But you need to secure your systems, lock down everything, and stop talking to Alicia unless you're being recorded. Julian nodded. What else? Naomi handed him the drive. Miles is involved. His name shows up everywhere. He's been helping Alicia. Julian's breath caught. Miles has been with me for 20 years. Naomi's eyes narrowed. Then he knows exactly where your blind spots are. Julian ran a hand over his mouth. I need to think. No, Naomi said. You need to act. She paused, then added softly, because the moment they decide you're no longer useful, you won't even know what hit you. Julian Cross drove through the winding roads of the Hamptons just past midnight, his Aston Martin cutting through the dark like a silent confession. The tires hummed against the pavement, a dull rhythm that echoed the thoughts tumbling in his mind. Next to him sat the flash drive Naomi had handed over hours earlier, proof of betrayal, evidence of conspiracy, and it all pointed to one name, Miles Stroud, Julian's most trusted friend, his CFO, the man who'd stood beside him during his first major acquisition, who sat beside him at his father's funeral, who held his shoulder the night he almost lost his company in the 2008 crash. Julian gripped the wheel tighter. Naomi was right, Miles knew everything. Bank access, voice signatures, travel logs, even how Julian responded under pressure. If there was a person capable of building a synthetic audio profile and laundering confidential intel into foreign servers, it was him. Julian didn't want to believe it, but the data didn't lie. He pulled up to a gated estate not his own. This was Miles's weekend property, an ocean-facing fortress, complete with manicured hedges and motion-sensitive lighting. Julian killed the engine, stepped out, and walked to the front door. He didn't ring the bell. He used the key Miles had given him years ago. Inside, the house was dark. But Julian didn't need light. He knew this place like his own. The hallway still smelled of cedar and old whiskey. The same jazz records sat by the fireplace. He found Miles in the study alone, reading. He looked up as Julian entered. Expression calm. Couldn't sleep either? Julian stared at him. You always said I was your human mirror, Miles said with a smile, setting down his glass. So what's going on? Julian didn't sit. Where were you Thursday night? Miles blinked. What? Thursday, between 9 p.m. and midnight. Miles leaned back in his leather armchair. At home. Why? Julian studied him. Can anyone confirm that? Miles chuckled, the sound smooth. My wife. My doorman. Why? Julian tossed the flash drive onto the desk. Miles's eyes followed it. What's this? Go ahead. Open it. A beat, then another. Miles didn't move. You want to tell me what this is about? I found surveillance devices in my house, Julian said, voice tight. Someone's been recording me, then splicing my voice into fake conversations. One of those conversations was about shifting capital offshore. You know how dangerous that is. I do, Miles said, but I didn't make those files. Then why is your name all over the export logs? Miles's eyes darkened. What logs? On Alicia's laptop. At that something flickered, the faintest shift, like a string pulled too tight. You went through Alicia's laptop? Julian stepped forward. She's working with someone. And I know it's you. Miles stood now, slowly, carefully. I think you need to calm down. I think you need to stop pretending. Miles held his gaze, then exhaled, long and slow. I never meant to hurt you, Jules. That was all it took. The room snapped out of silence. You, Julian's voice caught in his throat. You were supposed to protect this company. I did, Miles said quietly. For decades. I kept the wolves out. I made the books clean. But when Alicia came in, she offered something else. Julian's hands curled into fists. She said she could protect you. In ways I couldn't anymore. She had connections, access, leverage. Julian's voice lowered, deadly. So you sold me out. No, I partnered with her. Same thing. Miles took a step closer. You're losing control, Julian. You've been distracted. That Dubai deal? It was reckless. The board is nervous. Investors are whispering. Alicia and I were trying to build a safety net for you. For the company. Julian shook his head slowly. Don't spin this like some kind of mercy mission. Miles' jaw tensed. Do you think they'll follow you forever? That the world still cares about Julian Cross? The tech golden boy? You're not 25 anymore. You're not invincible. You're a liability. Julian's voice dropped to a cold whisper. I made you rich. And I made you relevant? Miles snapped. Do you know how many times I cleaned up after your mistakes? Legal, financial, personal. I trusted you, Julian said. I saved you, Miles shouted. And now you think some maid gets to walk in, flash a USB drive and change everything? Julian froze. Naomi. That name, that word, sounded like acid in Miles's mouth. I don't want to be your backup plan just because you're scared of the truth. Julian leaned forward, his voice lower. I don't want to be scared anymore. That's why I'm asking. There was something raw in his tone. Not vulnerability, Julian didn't show that, but fatigue. A man who had built an empire and now saw cracks forming in its walls. A man who'd been played and knew it. Naomi studied him. What exactly do you want from me? I want you to stay, he said, but not as a maid. She reached for his hand, soft fingers curling around his. I just don't feel comfortable with her in the house anymore. He looked at her. Why is that? Her expression faltered for a millisecond. Not enough for most people to notice, but Julian had built companies from the way people blinked. He saw it. She scares me, Alicia said softly. You saw how she twisted things. You saw how she looked at me. I was just trying to help, and she made me into the villain. And in that moment, Julian understood Miles didn't just betray him for profit. He betrayed him because someone like Naomi threatened the system. Quiet, sharp, unapologetic. She didn't beg for access, she exposed it. Julian took a step back. I know what I need to know, he said. You're going to ruin everything, Miles warned. Julian stared. No, you ruined everything. I'm just finally paying attention. He turned and walked out without another word. Every syllable Alicia spoke was being recorded. Every plan, every admission, every carefully masked betrayal was now being archived, time-stamped, backed up, and protected in 3 secure folders on 2 different offline drives. She didn't flinch when Julian opened the door behind her. She's moving fast, Naomi said without turning around. Julian stepped inside, still wearing the same clothes from his confrontation with Miles. He looked exhausted but sharper. His expression had lost its uncertainty. He had seen enough. She mentioned the biometric systems, Naomi continued. I assume that means your voice, your retina access, your fingerprint? Julian nodded, grim. We use biometric verification for almost everything. She's been sleeping next to me for 3 years. Getting samples wouldn't be hard. Naomi clicked a button, pausing the live feed. And she's already cloned your voice. Lal. She's planning to trigger the Dubai wire transfer, then let federal investigators take me down, he said. Naomi turned in her chair to face him. They want to collapse your credibility. Discredit you, frame you, then step in to salvage the company through a third party. Probably a holding company already prepped and waiting. Julian exhaled, jaw tight, all while keeping the media on their side. Naomi narrowed her eyes. We can't just collect data anymore. It's time to flip the script. 1. Julian raised an eyebrow. What do you suggest? We bait them. Into what? Into showing their full hand, Naomi said. We make them think you're spiraling, that you're preparing to flee or liquidate. Let them panic. Let them accelerate their plan. Julian looked at her, impressed. You're asking me to play weak. I'm asking you to act weak, she corrected, but only long enough to expose them fully. He sat down beside her. How do we do it? Naomi tapped the desk. First, you schedule a fake board meeting. Let Alicia think you're calling it to announce your resignation. Make her nervous. Let her move. Julian nodded slowly. That will work. If she believes I'm cracking, she'll push to activate whatever failsafe she's got in place. Naomi stood, and I'll track every move she makes. By the following afternoon, the first bait had been dropped. Julian walked into the kitchen where Alicia and the household staff had gathered. He looked disheveled, tie loosened, voice flat. I've scheduled a private board meeting Friday morning, he announced. No press. Just the core stakeholders. Alicia's eyes widened slightly. She masked it with a smile. Everything okay? He avoided eye contact. Just a few decisions I need to make, privately. She stepped toward him, gently touched his arm. "You don't have to go through this alone." Julian offered a thin smile. "I know." Then he turned and left the room. Naomi, watching from the hallway, caught Alicia's expression shift once Julian was gone. That warmth in her face vanished like smoke. She picked up her phone almost immediately and slipped into the study. Naomi followed, quiet, careful, stopping just outside the cracked door. "He's breaking down," Alicia whispered into the phone. "He's not sleeping. He looks like hell. If he resigns before Friday, we need to initiate phase 2. Get Miles to prep the press release. I'll take care of the banking override." Pause. "No, I'm not worried about Naomi. She's on her way out." Naomi's eyes hardened. That night, Naomi and Julian met in the greenhouse, a space rarely used and never monitored. The scent of lemon balm and damp soil wrapped around them. "She's moving," Naomi confirmed. "They're prepping a full transfer protocol. Digital, legal, public." Julian rubbed his face. "What's phase 2? She didn't say, but it's triggered by your resignation, which means we hold that card." He nodded. "I want to confront her." Naomi shook her head. "Not yet. Let her think she's won. The more confident she gets, the more careless she'll be." Julian paced between rows of ferns. "Do we know what Miles is doing?" "Not yet," Naomi replied. "But I've cloned Alicia's burner. I'll monitor her messages for the next 48 hours. Julian turned to her. "You've done more in 3 days than half my team has done in 3 years. Naomi crossed her arms. "It's easier to spot rot when you've lived in crumbling houses your whole life." Julian looked at her with something bordering respect, but deeper. There was admiration there. Gratitude. Maybe even regret. "I wish I had listened sooner," he said. Naomi didn't smile. "You still might be too late." On Wednesday morning, Naomi intercepted a message from Alicia's burner. "Friday, 7 a.m. Trigger audio package. Deploy clone if board access is confirmed. Miles will handle investor relations." She rushed to Julian's office, where he was already prepping files. "They're planning to use the voice clone Friday morning," she told him, "right before the board meets." Julian looked up. "How do we stop it?" Naomi's eyes gleamed. "We don't stop it. We let them press play. And we make sure the board hears both versions, theirs and the truth." Julian understood immediately. "You want to record them trying to impersonate me?" Naomi nodded. She had grown up surviving on observation, learning early how to read lies written between smiles and warnings hidden behind compliments. People always thought silence was the absence of sound, but Naomi had learned silence often had a shape, and right now, this house was speaking volumes. Julian entered the room quietly. He wasn't in a suit. That was new. Dressed in jeans and a navy sweater, he looked less like a billionaire and more like a man forced to step outside his comfort zone. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and stepped barefoot into the hallway. The hardwood creaked beneath her feet like it, too, was holding its breath. Her thoughts raced. In less than 24 hours, Alicia and Miles would attempt to destroy Julian with a fabricated recording, and unless every piece of Naomi's plan fell precisely into place, they might succeed. She walked to the office, now rigged with a secure, offline laptop. If there was a person capable of building a synthetic audio profile and laundering confidential intel into foreign servers, it was him. Julian didn't want to believe it, but the data didn't lie. He pulled up to a gated estate not his own. This was Miles' weekend property, an ocean-facing fortress, complete with manicured hedges and motion-sensitive lighting. Julian killed the engine, stepped out, and walked to the front door. He didn't ring the bell. No. She looped both files into a presentation and encrypted the folder. One shot, one moment. Downstairs, Julian sat at the dining table, hunched over a plate of toast he had no interest in eating. Naomi entered quietly and sat across from him. "She'll try to stop you," Naomi said without preamble. Julian looked up, eyes shadowed. "You think she knows?" "She suspects. She's too calm." He nodded. "Miles called last night. Wanted to meet. Said we should talk like men before tomorrow." Don't go," Naomi varned. "I already agreed." Naomi's voice lowered. "Then don't go alone." That afternoon, They met in Central Park Public, open and carefully staged. Julian wore a mic under his collar. Miles was already waiting, dressed in his usual tailored gray and a black scarf looped twice around his neck. He smiled when he saw Julian approaching, arms open as if they were two old friends catching up over politics and cigars. "Jules," he said warmly. "Didn't think you'd show." "No, I'm here." Miles gestured toward a bench. "Let's talk." Julian sat, careful, quiet. Miles launched into a long, casual speech about loyalty and pressure and legacy. He used every word like a weapon wrapped in silk. "You're exhausted," he said. "I get it. We both know you've been slipping." Julian didn't reply. "So here's what I'm offering. Let Alicia take the heat. She steps in, smooths things over. You step back. Take a break. Go to Italy, hell. Go to Mars if you want. And when it blows over, we can talk about the company again." Julian turned to him. "You're offering me exile." Miles smiled. "I'm offering you survival. You think I don't know about the voice clone?" That stopped Miles only for a second. "Julian, I found the devices. I saw the files. I know." Miles's smile dropped. "Then you know why we did it?" "No," Julian said coldly. "I only know that you did." Miles leaned in. "You don't want this war. Think about what we know about each other. You expose us, we expose you." Julian stood. "You've already tried." Then, without another word, he walked away. Back at the mansion, Naomi was waiting in the east wing, where the sun set through arched windows and painted the hardwood floors golden. She looked up as Julian entered. "How'd it go?" Julian dropped a USB on the table. "He offered me a vacation in exchange for my silence." Naomi snorted. "That's generous of him." Julian rubbed his temples. "They're going all in tomorrow, and they think I'm scared enough to walk away." Naomi stepped closer. "Let them think it. Let them show up smug. Let them press play." Julian glanced at her. "You still sure this will work?" Naomi's voice was firm. "I'm sure they've never met a maid who could outsmart a billionaire in a boardroom full of cowards." That night, Alicia returned home late. Naomi passed her in the foyer, offered no smile. Alicia returned the favor. "Still here?" Alicia asked. "Not for long," Naomi replied. Alicia tilted her head. "You're brave, or stupid." Naomi leaned in slightly, her voice like a whisper edged in glass. "And you're sloppy. For someone who records everything, you really should have listened to the wrong conversations." A flicker of confusion passed across Alicia's eyes, but she covered it with a smirk. "Sweet dreams," she said. "Let's hope," Naomi replied. In his private study, Julian sat alone that night, watching a video Naomi had pulled from the last set of surveillance files. In it, Alicia stood by the pool, speaking to someone on her phone. "If this doesn't work," she said, "we trigger the full leak. Drag him down with scandal. No one will care if it's true, they'll care that it's juicy." Julian turned the video off. His jaw was tight. The endgame was in motion. Friday morning arrived like a breath held too long. Julian adjusted his cufflinks in the mirror. He looked composed, cold. Behind him, Naomi stood in a tailored black blazer, holding a folder and a flash drive. "This is it," she said. Julian nodded once. "Let's burn it down." At 7:58 a.m., the 11th floor of Crosstech headquarters buzzed with the kind of tension usually reserved for hostile takeovers and company implosions. The boardroom, a sleek glass and oak chamber overlooking the East River, had been prepped with fresh coffee, water pitchers, and silence. 10 members of the board were already seated, their conversations hushed and cautious. Julian Cross entered exactly at 8. He didn't speak right away. He walked to the head of the long table, his footsteps steady, his presence commanding despite the subtle wear in his eyes. Behind him, Naomi followed without a word, placing a black folder in front of each board member with quiet precision. Some board members exchanged glances. Most of them didn't know Naomi well, just another staff member, perhaps a glorified assistant. Today, they'd learn differently. Julian cleared his throat. "Before we begin, I need to share something of urgent importance, and I ask that you remain silent until I've finished." There was a murmur of agreement. Only one voice cut through with false warmth. "Julian," Alicia cooed. her smile sharp. She sat 3 seats down, dressed in a crisp white blazer, her hair perfectly styled, posture relaxed. Why the formality? You called this meeting for a simple discussion, didn't you? Julian looked at her for a long moment. You'll find out soon enough. He tapped a button on the sleek tabletop console, and the built-in screen slid up from the center of the table. Naomi inserted a flash drive. The screen flickered. Audio played. I never approved any offshore wire. Anyone who says otherwise is lying. Julian's real voice. Calm, precise. Then, a second clip. Move the capital before she starts asking questions. She doesn't need to know. The board members leaned forward, frowns appearing, some eyebrows raised. Julian addressed the room. That second recording is not me. It was generated using artificial voice synthesis. The software used to make it relies on months of audio input gathered from within my own home. Gasps rippled. I found hidden surveillance devices in 5 locations. Julian continued. Unauthorized. Undocumented. Transmitting to external servers not registered with our security systems. One board member, an older woman with glasses and a reputation for forensic audits, leaned forward. Who placed them? Julian didn't answer. Naomi stepped forward instead. I did the sweep. I also cloned the signal paths. The data logs point to a burner phone registered under a false name used inside Mr. Cross's home by Miss Alicia Monroe. All eyes swiveled to Alicia. She gave a short, soft laugh. You're taking her word? A housemaid? This is ridiculous. Then let's hear you explain this, Julian said, pressing play on a final video. The screen lit up with night vision footage. Alicia stood in her room, back to the camera. On the phone. If things go south, we flip the voice clone, trigger the Dubai deal, and let the feds eat him alive. Silence. No one moved. Alicia stood, slowly. This is edited. You're fabricating evidence. Naomi stepped forward again, her voice firm. Time-stamped, encrypted. Recorded from your own burner phone. The one you thought was secure. Julian turned to the board. This woman has conspired with Miles Stroud to commit corporate espionage, identity fraud, and financial sabotage. She planned to fabricate orders under my name, then trigger a scandal that would destroy my reputation and force me out. Miles would manage the transition, and a third-party acquisition would pick up the pieces. He paused, and our company would be gutted. One of the senior board members finally spoke. Where is Miles now? Naomi answered. He hasn't shown up this morning. Probably guessed what was coming. Another board member turned to Alicia. Do you deny what we just saw? Alicia didn't speak. Julian's voice cut in again. I trusted her. I lived with her. I let her into every part of my life. And she used that access to try and dismantle everything we've built. The woman with the glasses spoke again, this time formally. I moved to immediately suspend Alicia Monroe from any and all corporate duties, pending legal investigation. I also request that a third-party audit be launched into Miles Stroud's financial activities over the past 6 months. Another board member seconded it. A third added, freeze all outgoing wires and hold Alicia in the building until legal arrives. Julian nodded. I support the motion. Alicia stood frozen for a moment longer, her carefully crafted expression cracking. You think this is over? She whispered. Julian didn't blink. It's already over. Dode. Outside the boardroom, as security led Alicia away, Naomi stood silently near the hallway window, watching the skyline as if it were breathing easier now. Julian joined her a few moments later. I should feel relief, he said. But you don't, Naomi replied. He nodded. Just hollow. That's normal, she said. It's the sound of peace when you've been living with war for too long. He looked at her. You saved everything. Naomi turned to him, her voice soft. I did what needed to be done. You'll stay? He asked. Naomi gave him a long look. You don't need a maid anymore. I need someone I can trust. Naomi hesitated. Then, let's see if you can earn it. They stood there, not speaking, as sunlight spilled over the glass. Tomorrow, there would be statements. Legal motions. Investigations. But today was the first day the house no longer had to whisper. The aftermath unfolded not with fireworks, but with paperwork cold, clinical, and relentless. By Monday morning, Alicia's name had been scrubbed from the Crosstech executive directory. Legal counsel had initiated proceedings to investigate financial misconduct, and a third-party security firm had begun a digital sweep that would take weeks. But even as the public face of justice began to turn its gears, a strange quiet settled over the estate. Julian felt it first. The house, though now free of its hidden cameras and carefully planted betrayals, felt vacant. Not physically, Naomi still moved through the halls. The staff still performed their daily routines, but emotionally, there was a hollow chamber where trust had once lived. Julian stood on the back terrace that morning, sipping black coffee, watching the sea fold and unfold like it was keeping secrets. Naomi approached, dressed in a charcoal blazer and denim jeans, clipboard in hand. She looked more like an operations analyst than a maid now, and that was precisely the point. "We're still missing one piece," she said, no preamble. Julian didn't look away from the horizon. "Miles." Naomi nodded. "He didn't run." Julian turned to her. "How do you know?" Naomi opened the folder. "Because his accounts haven't moved. No offshore withdrawals. No flight records. He's still here, somewhere, and he's quiet, which makes him more dangerous than Alicia ever was." Julian's jaw tightened. "You think he's planning something?" "I think he's waiting to see if you flinch." Julian took a slow sip of his coffee. He won't get that satisfaction. That afternoon, Naomi met with Jackson Greer, the new interim head of security, a retired FBI analyst Julian had brought in after the scandal broke. They sat in the converted surveillance room Naomi had retrofitted into a real command center. "We swept Alicia's burner again," Jackson reported, sliding over a new printout. "And we found this." Naomi scanned the transcript. A single message from Miles, sent 1 hour before the board meeting last Friday. "Don't show up. Let her fall alone. The next move is mine." Naomi exhaled slowly. He planned this, sacrificed her to buy himself time. Jackson nodded. "And now, he's off the radar." She looked up. "Then we need bait." Jackson raised an eyebrow. "You suggesting we smoke him out?" "I'm suggesting we make him believe Julian's vulnerable again." Jackson hesitated. "That's a dangerous game." Naomi's voice was calm. "So is letting him make the next move." That evening, Julian stood before the fireplace, a letter in his hand. It was from Alicia, mailed the day after her arrest. The handwriting was neat, impersonal, no apology, no remorse. Just one sentence. "You were never built for war." Julian tossed the letter into the fire. "I disagree," Naomi said behind him. He turned, startled. "You read it?" "I saw it. I didn't need to read it to know what she'd say." He sat down, motioning for her to join him. "She always said I was too soft, too trusting. You were betrayed, Julian. That doesn't make you weak. It means you gave someone a chance they didn't deserve." He was quiet for a long moment. "You still haven't said what you want," he finally said. Naomi tilted her head. "Excuse me? You've helped me expose Alicia. You dismantled her entire plan. But you haven't asked for anything in return. No position, no money, no favor." Naomi smiled faintly. "You still don't get it, do you?" "Get what?" "I didn't do it for you." Julian frowned slightly. "Then why?" "I did it because I know what it feels like to be invisible. To have someone walk into your home, use your name, your life, like a costume. I wasn't going to let them do that to you. Not again." His expression softened. "So what now?" Naomi stood, walking toward the window. Outside, the estate lights flickered on one by one, like a heartbeat returning. "Now, we prepare for Miles." Across town, in a discreet brownstone tucked behind the bustle of Midtown, Miles Stroud stood before a wall of monitors. His eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep, his movements slow but focused. He rewound the security footage again, Julian at the board meeting, Naomi at his side, the flash drive, the betrayal exposed. He smiled. "They're getting cocky," he muttered. A knock on the door. He opened it. A man stepped inside, mid-40s, dark suit, no name. "You still want the synthetic ID packages?" the man asked. Miles nodded. "And the asset triggers?" "All of it," Miles said. The man paused. "You know this will burn everything. There's no coming back from this." "Nah." Miles looked past him at the glowing screen. On it, Julian smiled, oblivious. That's the point. Back at the mansion, Naomi walked the perimeter, noting small changes: the garden tools left out, the garage light left on longer than usual, the window in Julian's office slightly ajar. Subtle, she murmured. She knew what it meant. The storm wasn't over. It had just changed shape. Julian's days grew more calculated. Ever since Alicia's arrest, the mansion had been under tighter protocols. And so had he. But what unsettled him wasn't just the betrayal. It was the silence that followed. Miles had disappeared like smoke into the folds of Manhattan, leaving behind no tracks, no blips. That kind of absence, Naomi knew, was always deliberate. On Tuesday morning, the first ripple appeared. Naomi entered the study, holding a slim envelope. Her knuckles were pale from how tightly she'd been gripping it. Naomi. She froze. He walked toward her. Can we talk? She stood still, her hands tightening around the basket's edge. I shouldn't have spoken like that, he began, or let anyone put hands on you. That wasn't right. She said nothing. But you need to understand what you accused Alicia of. I didn't accuse, she said quietly. I reported something. Julian sighed. I know what I saw, looked bad, but Alicia was scared, and for the first time, he allowed the thought to fully form. What if Alicia wasn't the woman he thought she was? He opened his laptop and began checking the security logs. Naomi's name didn't appear anywhere she wasn't supposed to be. No late-night entries. No violations. But Alicia? She had logged into the office Wi-Fi 5 times while he was gone on trips when the house was supposed to be empty. And the guest room camera? Julian followed Naomi's steps. Opened the vase. This was created using your AI profile, he confirmed. Same algorithm Alicia used. But the source IP address? He tapped the keyboard. Came from within the Manhattan server farm owned by Stroud Enterprises. Julian's face hardened. So he's using his own infrastructure now. Jackson turned to Naomi. And if he has access to this level of data synthesis, he might already be building more fabricated scenarios. Naomi nodded. Then we don't wait, we strike. Julian crossed his arms. With what? Naomi stepped toward the screen, tapping it. We fight fiction with truth, but we do it publicly. No more shadows. Julian hesitated. You want me to go on camera? I want you to take control of the narrative. Confess what they're trying to do. Expose the voice cloning. The surveillance. Show the original file. And the synthetic one side by side. Put it out before they do. Jackson raised an eyebrow. That's risky. The media will tear it apart. Naomi looked to Julian. Only if you hesitate. He was silent. Then, set it up. By that evening, Naomi and Julian were seated in the home studio, an old library converted into a recording room with neutral backdrops and soft lighting. No PR agents, no teleprompters, just Julian, facing the camera. Naomi hit record. Julian leaned forward. My name is Julian Cross, he began. I built Crosstech from nothing. I've served my clients, my investors, and my country with integrity for over 2 decades. May. He paused, voice calm. But I've been betrayed. He told the story. The surveillance, the synthetic voice files, Alicia, Miles. He laid it out like a roadmap of truth through a field of lies. I've made mistakes. I've trusted the wrong people. But I'm not running. I'm not hiding. And I will not be erased by technology I didn't create and lies I didn't tell. He ended with a simple line. This is not just about me. It's about every one of us who's ever been silenced with a lie. Nah. Naomi ended the recording. Within an hour, it was uploaded. Within 6, it was trending. By morning, Julian's name was on every major news outlet. Not as a scandal, but as a warning. Across town, in his hideaway, Miles watched it unfold on his monitors. He moved faster than I expected, he muttered. The man beside him, same anonymous figure from before, looked impressed. He flipped the narrative. Took your play and beat you with it. Miles smiled, thin and sharp. Good. That means we're close. To what? To the fall. He stood and walked toward a small steel case. Unlocked it. Inside, several passports, each under different names. A black key card. And a second drive. Activate the final protocol, he said. What's on it? The man asked. Miles didn't answer. Back at the mansion, Julian's study became the new war room. Naomi stood over a digital map of server pathways. "We've flushed him out," she said. "Now he's either going to go into hiding or go nuclear." Julian nodded. "So what's the move?" "We bait him again. But this time, you vanish." He turned. "Vanish?" Naomi's eyes didn't waver. "You disappear from the public eye. Make it seem like you're running. Meanwhile, we track the trap he lays in your absence." Julian paced. "And if I disappear, won't that confirm guilt to the press?" Naomi shook her head. "Not if we control the leak. Make it look like someone forced you into hiding. Suggest you were threatened." Julian's voice dropped. "That's dangerously close to crying wolf." Naomi's tone softened. "This isn't crying wolf. This is pulling the wolf out of the shadows." He stared at her, then finally nodded. "Do it." Hours later, Naomi stood alone outside in the garden, staring into the night. For the first time, she felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in weeks' fatigue. But there was no room for it. Not yet. She touched the small necklace beneath her collar. It wasn't fancy, just a modest chain with a silver coin her grandmother had given her when she left Birmingham. "For protection," her grandmother had said. "For when the truth's too heavy to carry alone." Naomi whispered under her breath, "Just a little longer." Because she knew something Julian didn't yet. The final file Miles had prepared wasn't just a synthetic voice recording. It was something far more personal. "Ma'am, I'm only telling him what I found." "You found?" Alicia's voice cracked. "Julian, she's threatening me. She's been acting strange for weeks, watching me, following me in the hallways. I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to seem dramatic, but..." She choked on her breath, tears rising. "I'm scared." Julian stiffened. Naomi froze. "That's not true." "I wasn't." "You came into the guest room without permission," Alicia accused, trembling. "You went through my makeup drawer." Because somewhere in that storm of rumor, Miles Stroud resurfaced. Naomi knew it the moment she received the ping. Encrypted data packet. No sender. Subject line, "You left a trail." Inside was a single file, no audio this time. Just a video. Naomi watched it in the surveillance room, her fingers curled tightly around the armrest of the chair. The video opened with grainy footage, home security style. A younger Julian, maybe mid-30s, sitting on a sofa in a brownstone she didn't recognize. His tie was loose. A half-empty bottle of scotch on the table beside him. His expression was flat, eyes hollow. The date on the corner flickered. The 13th of November 2010. Then a second man entered the frame. Miles. He was thinner, cleaner cut, carrying 2 glasses. He handed one to Julian. What followed was an exchange. Low voices, hard to make out. But then came the moment. "Not for long," Naomi replied. Alicia tilted her head. "You're brave. Or stupid." Naomi leaned in slightly. Her voice like a whisper edged in glass. "And you're sloppy. For someone who records everything, you really should have listened to the wrong conversations." A flicker of confusion passed across Alicia's eyes, but she covered it with a smirk. "Sweet dreams," she said. "Let's hope," Naomi replied. "May I?" he asked, nodding toward the counter stool. Naomi didn't answer. She rinsed the bowl, dried it, and finally turned. "What's the plan?" she asked. Julian leaned forward. "I want to start with Alicia's devices. Her laptop, her phone, the burner she probably keeps hidden. She's smart, but she's not subtle. Someone's helping her." Naomi raised an eyebrow. "You want to do this yourself?" "I thought you could show me how," he said. "Teach me what to look for." He nodded, slowly. "That deal in 2010. There was a competitor. They had the tech first. But we had Miles. And Miles had access." He stood, walked to the far wall, voice low. "We buried it, staged it like a trade failure, acquired the tech at a loss. Their company collapsed a month later. The world never knew." Naomi didn't look away, but Miles kept a copy. Julian nodded. "And now he's threatening to release it." "He's not just threatening," Julian said. "He's weaponizing the past. He knows if that video goes public, it's over. Not just for me, for the company, for everything we built." Naomi crossed her arms. "Then we need to beat him to it." Julian turned. "You're suggesting I confess." "I'm suggesting you own it." just like you did with the clone footage. But this time, we go deeper. We tell the whole truth. And we show people what he's doing with it. Julian exhaled. And if they don't forgive me, Naomi's eyes met his. Then you fall standing, not hiding. That evening, Julian's publicist, who had been frantically trying to reach him since the media circus began, finally received a direct call. Julian's voice was even. I'm releasing a statement. No spin, no edits. The publicist stammered. Julian, this could cost you everything. If this is about the 2010 contract, we can mitigate. There's no mitigation, he said. Only ownership. The next morning, Naomi stood by as Julian sat in front of the same studio camera. He didn't wear a tie. His shirt sleeves were rolled up. He looked older today, and that was intentional. He spoke, not as a billionaire, not as a brand, but as a man. He told the story of the 2010 deal, how pressure, ambition, and arrogance pushed him into compromising what he believed was a temporary truth. He admitted to letting Miles take the lead in the cover-up. He admitted to silence, to cowardice, to guilt. But then he spoke of growth, of time, of regret that never left his bones. And then, he revealed the threat. Miles' manipulation of the past, his extortion attempt, his pattern of using synthetic narratives to erase real ones. This is not a plea for forgiveness, Julian said at the end. This is a reckoning with myself and with the men who still believe power is built by silence. Naomi ended the recording with a quiet nod. They uploaded it within the hour. The backlash was immediate, but so was the support. Within 6 hours, a trending hashtag took over the news. Number truth before control. Former employees, clients, and even former competitors began to step forward with their own stories, not of Julian's past, but of Miles's present. Leaked memos, buried threats, contracts falsified through back channels. By sunset, Naomi sat in the study with Jackson, a laptop open between them. We just got a hit, Jackson said, eyes widening. Miles just triggered a dummy account in Sweden. He's moving again. Naomi leaned in. Can we track it? I already am. Julian entered, his voice low. We ready for the next move? Naomi looked up, something fierce in her eyes. Almost, but first, we pull the last thread. Across the city, in a rented flat under a false name, Miles stood at a table cluttered with drives, IDs, a burner, laptop, and a gun. He hadn't shaved in days. His eyes were raw, desperate, but not broken. The news played behind him, Julian's confession, the world reacting. Miles watched it all, expression unreadable. Then he smiled, faintly. You're not done yet, Julian. He picked up the final drive, the one he hadn't used, the one Naomi didn't know existed. It wasn't about money, or voice clones, or contracts. It was about Naomi, and it was going to hurt. The morning sun filtered through gauzy curtains, painting the mansion's walls in soft gold. But inside Julian's private study, the mood was anything but warm. Naomi sat across from Jackson, her brow furrowed, voice taut with urgency. He's gone quiet again, she said. That last account ping was a decoy. I checked the metadata fabricated location tags. Jackson rubbed his jaw. Then what was the point of the dummy transfer? To make us look the wrong way, which means he's preparing a hit from the other direction. Naomi stood, pacing the floor. She felt it in her gut like the air before a storm. Miles wasn't done, not by a long shot. Just then, Julian entered, holding his phone, his face pale. I think I know what it is, he said quietly. He handed the phone to Naomi. A new email, new subject line, no sender, just a link. And above it, in the body of the email, one sentence. Who is Naomi Reed, really? The link led to a private website, password protected, but Naomi's hands were already moving. Her training silent, deeply buried, rose like a tide. She cracked the encryption in less than 4 minutes. The screen blinked, then loaded a full dossier. Her name, her face, her past. Not just her current identity, but the one before it. Her real name, her sealed juvenile record, her expunged charges from age 16. Everything. She froze. Julian looked at her. Naomi, talk to me. Her voice was low. He knows. About Birmingham. About what I did to get out. Even the sealed parts. Julian pulled the screen closer. Forgery, obstruction, petty theft, most of this was before you were 17. Naomi turned away. It doesn't matter. People won't see the date. They'll see the headline. Julian Cross. Protected by ex-con with hidden identity. Jackson narrowed his eyes. This file. It's not just a leak. It's designed to detonate. Naomi nodded. Miles held it back for a reason. He's waited until Julian is finally standing tall again to knock the foundation out from under him. Julian placed a hand on her arm. We don't let him. Naomi's voice cracked. Just slightly. Julian, this isn't about business anymore. This is personal. If this goes public, I'm not the only one who gets hit. You will. You'll be accused of harboring someone under false pretenses, access to sensitive company records, legal exposure, board scrutiny. I don't care, Julian said firmly. Naomi looked at him stunned. I care, he added softer, that you didn't tell me. She looked away. I thought if I buried it deep enough, it would stop mattering. Julian didn't speak for a long moment. Then he sat down. I've trusted you with everything. My safety, my family, my reputation. And now I see you've had to carry your past in silence while carrying mine on your back. That isn't just loyalty, Naomi. That's sacrifice. She blinked, lips trembling slightly. But this will hurt you, she whispered. It'll look like I manipulated my way into your life. Like I used my skin, my story, to play you. Julian's voice was steady. Then let's get ahead of it. Again. Naomi stared at him. You want to release it? He nodded. But on our terms, not Miles's. Jackson interjected. If you're serious, we need to move fast. Miles won't wait forever. Once he posts this, the media will shred it to pieces. Naomi straightened her spine. Then let's get to work. That evening, Julian posted a short video to his verified account. It opened not with him but with Naomi. She sat before the same neutral backdrop, her eyes clear, her voice unshaking. My name is Naomi Reed. I used to be someone else, and I'm not ashamed of that anymore. She told her story, about being born into poverty in the South, about her father's arrest, about the hunger, the instability, the desperate, wild decision to forge documents that would get her a bus pass to Chicago when she was 16, about the halfway home, the years of silence, because somewhere in that storm of rumor, Miles Stroud resurfaced. Naomi knew it the moment she received the ping. Encrypted data packet. No sender. Subject line. You left a trail. Inside was a single file, no audio this time. Just a video. Naomi watched it in the surveillance room, her fingers curled tightly around the armrest of the chair. The video opened with grainy footage, home security style. Your own sins. Because if she's guilty of anything, it's believing that people can change. And she proved it. The video closed with a black screen and a white line. No one is only what they've survived. The response was seismic. Older viewers, especially from the Black and immigrant communities, flooded the internet with support. Letters, videos, testimonies. I was Naomi. I had a record too, and no one gave me a chance. I watched that video and cried. But Miles hadn't played all his cards for nothing. Because that night, while the city slept, a second file went live on an anonymous drop site. It was a mix of truth and manipulation. Photos of Naomi in the mansion framed to look suggestive, intimate. Edited clips of her entering Julian's bedroom at late hours, paired with a headline, From Maid to Mistress, Naomi Reed's Secret Rise. The implication was poison. The next morning, the tabloids exploded. Julian leaned forward, slurring slightly, and said, We both know what we did to get that contract. It wasn't legal, wasn't clean, but it made us kings, didn't it? Miles didn't speak. Julian raised the glass in mock toast. To secrets we bury, and the ones we don't survive. The clip ended there. Naomi didn't move for several seconds. Then, she replayed it. And again. She studied the digital noise, the camera angle, the lighting, the frame rate. Her name, her life was now tabloid fodder, her integrity buried under gossip columns and doctored footage. The carefully built trust with the public now teetered on a precipice. Julian broke the silence. That footage came from inside the house. Naomi nodded. Old surveillance data. Alicia must have archived it before we wiped the drives. Jackson interjected. The problem isn't just the footage, it's the narrative. Miles doesn't need truth. He needs doubt. That's enough to erode credibility. Now, Julian stared at the images frozen on the screen, her silhouette entering his office late at night. No audio, no context, just implication. We need to go surgical, Naomi said. Expose him with undeniable proof. Something public, loud, and real. Jackson leaned forward. We've been chasing Miles from the outside. But maybe the answer's inside. Julian raised an eyebrow. Inside where? Naomi's eyes narrowed. Stroud Enterprises. Jackson nodded. Every move Miles made, every clone file, every leak, every data trail originated from a subnet tied to his headquarters. We believe he's operating out of a secure server room beneath the East Wing. Naomi looked at Julian. You want to end this? We break into that server room, we take everything, and we stream it live. Julian didn't hesitate. Set it up. No. 2 nights later, the air around Stroud Enterprises was humid and heavy autumn, trying to turn the corner, but summer refusing to release its grip. Naomi wore dark jeans, a black jacket, and a concealed mic. Jackson coordinated from a van parked 2 blocks away. Julian was back up reluctantly, but Naomi had insisted she go in alone. This isn't just about exposure, she had told him. This is personal. Stroud's building was a fortress-gated entry, keycard-controlled elevators, biometric locks. But Naomi wasn't relying on force. She was relying on knowledge. Knowledge from when she once worked 3 cleaning jobs to pay rent in Chicago, from when she learned how to decode security routines, listen for patterns, read human rhythms. Survival had trained her better than any course. Inside, she moved like a ghost bypassing cameras, gliding through side halls, until she reached the basement stairwell. 2 floors down, and she stood in front of the reinforced steel door leading to the server room. She pulled a small RFID spoofer from her jacket. I borrowed this from a friend in Quantico, she whispered into her mic. The lock clicked. Copy that, Jackson replied in her earpiece. You've got 10 minutes. Inside, the room buzzed with cold air and whirring drives. Racks of servers towered overhead, blinking like a living thing. Naomi moved to the central console and plugged in her decryption key. The screen lit up. Folders appeared. Project, mirror voice, surveillance seed logs, reputation strike list. She began downloading everything. Then her screen flickered. A live feed opened. Miles, sitting in a chair across from the camera, calmly watching her. I knew you'd come, he said. Naomi's breath caught. I hoped you'd be smart enough to walk away, he continued, voice like velvet over a blade. But here we are. You and your white knight, still pretending truth is enough to fix the world. Naomi stared at the feed. This ends tonight. Miles leaned back. No, this ends you tonight. The power surged. The server lights flickered. Her download paused. Jackson's voice came through her earpiece. Choppy. Naomi, he's launching a purge. Files are self-erasing. You've got 90 seconds. Boat. She moved fast, bypassing the main node, rerouting the transfer through a manual port. Sweat beaded at her temple as her fingers flew over the keyboard. 70 seconds. You think exposing me will save you? Miles hissed through the feed. They'll still remember the headline, the whispers. The maid turned mistress. You'll always be a footnote in someone else's scandal. Naomi didn't answer. 50 seconds. You're a symbol, Naomi. Miles continued, smile cruel. And symbols are easier to destroy than people. She stared at him, then slowly leaned toward the camera. No, she said. I'm the woman who saw through your mask, and now so will everyone else. She pressed send to live server. The screen blinked. Uploading to public node. Fempton %, 22%. Jackson's voice cut in. It's going live. You did it. Naomi pulled the drive, turned, and ran. By dawn, the footage had reached every major outlet. The files exposed Miles's orchestration of the synthetic media, the manipulation of Julian's voice and image, the targeted attacks on whistleblowers. It revealed payouts, fake contracts, and a digital campaign designed to destroy Naomi's name with doctored security footage. There was no spin, no saving it. Miles Stroud had gone too far, and now, the world knew it. Within hours, warrants were issued. His assets were frozen, he vanished. But the headlines were different now. They didn't say scandal at Crosstech. They said Naomi Reed, truth teller. That evening, Naomi sat on the back porch of the mansion, finally still. Julian joined her, handing her a glass of iced tea. "You made history today," he said. She smiled faintly. "I didn't want history. I wanted peace." Julian sat beside her. "You earned both." For a moment, there was silence between them. Then Julian spoke again. "There's a position open," he said. "Chief of Security and Ethics. Full clearance. Executive role." Naomi looked at him, amused. "From maid to executive?" "No," he said. "From survivor to leader." She stared into the horizon. "Let me think about it." But in her heart, she already knew. She wasn't running anymore. 2 weeks had passed since Miles vanished into the dark seams of the world. His face had graced the covers of Forbes and Time, not as a mogul, but as a cautionary tale. Every bank account frozen, every shell company exposed. His carefully crafted empire of shadows had collapsed under the full weight of Naomi's truth. But for Naomi, the war hadn't left her unscathed. Her name was cleared, yes. Her story vindicated. But the bruises weren't only on her reputation, they were inside. Invisible. Lingering. She walked slowly through the Crosstech garden that morning, the same one she had once weeded in silence, back when no one even bothered to ask her name. Now, every staff member she passed greeted her with a quiet smile. Respectful. Grateful. But her heart was heavy. Julian found her by the fountain, where a vine of autumn roses still bloomed defiantly. He didn't speak at first. "I got a call this morning," he finally said. "Interpol believes Miles has fled to Morocco. He's hiding under diplomatic protection." Naomi's eyes didn't blink. "So he gets to disappear. Just like that?" Julian's voice darkened. "For now," she nodded slowly. "Then we don't chase him. We build something better in his absence." Julian looked at her. "That offer still stands, Naomi, Chief of Security and Ethics. The board's ready to approve it." She turned to him. "And if I say yes, it means I go from being the woman in the shadows to the face of this company's conscience." Julian stepped closer. "You already are." Later that afternoon, Naomi walked into the executive conference room, the same place Alicia had once smirked at her from across the polished table, the same table where lies had once lived comfortably. Now, the room was different. The energy was quieter, cleaner. Julian stood at the head, surrounded by board members. Naomi approached the center, standing straight. She wore navy slacks, a cream blouse, and the same silver necklace her grandmother had given her quiet armor against the weight of the world. "This won't be a traditional promotion," Julian said, addressing the room. "It's a correction. A statement. A new chapter." He gestured to her. "Naomi Reed doesn't just understand security. She is security, of our data, of our integrity, of our future." She didn't flinch when the votes came in. Unanimous. Applause followed. But Naomi didn't smile until later, when she found herself alone in her new office. Sunlight streamed through the window. On her desk sat a single framed photo, her and Julian standing side by side the day after Alicia's arrest, a photo Jackson had taken. In the corner of the room, a moving box sat unopened. She opened it. Inside were a few of her old things. The apron from the kitchen, her original ID badge, a worn paperback copy of Their Eyes Were Watching God, a book she'd kept tucked in the drawer by the guest quarters. She held the book, remembering the words of Zora Neale Hurston, "There are years that ask questions and years that answer." This, she realized, had been both. That evening, the house was unusually quiet. The security upgrades were finished. The investigation team's gone. It almost felt normal again. Julian found her in the library, leafing through reports. "You've been in here all day," he said. "You'll forget what the sun looks like." Naomi glanced up. "Occupational hazard." "No." He smiled, then hesitated. There's something I want to show you." She followed him out through the back door and across the courtyard. Beyond the garden, past the pool, was the guest house. She hadn't stepped foot in it since the week she'd arrived. Inside, the space had changed. Where once there were sterile walls and outdated furnishings, there was now warmth, a small kitchenette, new curtains, a reading nook by the window. The walls had been painted a soft, welcoming shade of sage green. Julian turned to her. "It's yours. Permanently," Naomi blinked. "You renovated the guest house, for me? I wanted you to have a space that's yours," he said. "Not borrowed, not temporary, home." Her throat tightened. "Julian, I don't know what to say." He looked at her gently. "Then don't say anything. Just stay." Later that night, Naomi sat on the guest house porch, staring at the stars. The air was cool. Her tea still steamed in her hands. Her phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. This isn't over. No name. No context. But she knew. It was Miles. Still watching. Still out there. She stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Then she walked back inside, locked the door behind her, and turned off the light. Because fear, she realized, had no home here anymore. Only purpose. Only truth. It was a Thursday morning when the stillness broke. Naomi arrived at Crosstech headquarters at 7:12 a.m. sharp, as she had every day since her appointment. Her presence alone had shifted the tone of the building. Conversations quieted when she walked by, not out of fear, but out of respect. Even those who had once questioned her presence now watched her with careful admiration. She was not merely Julian Cross's protector anymore. She was his mirror, his shield. But that morning, something was wrong. Her assistant, Melanie, a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 50s, stood beside the elevator, holding a folder. "It came through the courier service at 6:30 a.m., Melanie said. "No return name. No fingerprints. Just this." The folder was black, unmarked. Naomi opened it. Inside, a photograph. Julian, sitting in the mansion garden, sipping coffee, taken from a long-lens camera, the angle elevated possibly from the hill above the property. The timestamp? 2 days ago. Naomi felt her heart slow. Not race slow. Cold. Methodical. There was a note clipped to the back. "You locked the door, but the window's still open." No name. No signature. Just Miles's handwriting. Julian's jaw tightened as he reviewed the photo. "We've swept the property 3 times since then," Naomi said. The drone grid picked up nothing unusual. But this wasn't a drone. This was a human. Possibly a camera with a telephoto lens from a long range. Julian leaned back in his chair. "He's back." "He never left," Naomi corrected. "He was waiting." Jackson pulled the photo closer, squinting. "This was taken from Ridgepoint Hollow. It's private land. But there are 2 access trails. If someone's watching, it's from there." Naomi closed the folder. "Then we watch it back." The next 48 hours became a silent operation. No press. No police. No visible security changes. Naomi initiated Protocol Echo, a dormant surveillance strategy created for situations exactly like this. Covert cameras were placed across the ridgelines, disguised within wildlife observation gear. Motion sensors were installed under the guise of conservation tracking. Even Julian didn't walk outside without a silent tale. Naomi herself slept only 3 hours across 2 days. And then, just before dawn on the 3rd day, the system pinged. A figure. Male. 6'1". Slim. Black baseball cap. Hiking boots. Carrying a long case, likely for a camera. He moved slowly, methodically, down the ridge. And then, he looked straight into one of the hidden cameras. Not by accident, with intention, and smiled. Later that morning, Julian poured coffee in the mansion kitchen, calm despite the storm unfolding. Naomi entered, tablet in hand. "He's taunting us," she said, sliding the image to him. Julian looked at it. "That's not fear. That's control." Naomi nodded. "It's what he's always done. Undermine confidence. Twist comfort into vulnerability. This isn't just about watching. It's about reminding us we're still part of his game." Julian tapped the table lightly. "Then we need to change the rules. They decided not to confront him, not yet. Instead, Naomi coordinated with a federal cybersecurity analyst she'd worked with years ago, Ruth Martinez, now an agent with the Department of Defense. Ruth specialized in behavioral profiling via digital footprint, and after combing through recent dark web activity and anonymized drop servers, she gave them a lead. Miles isn't hiding, Ruth said over a secure call. He's nesting, building something new under a different identity. Naomi narrowed her eyes. Where? Ruth hesitated. Upstate. Kingston, New York. We traced a digital signature, matching his pattern code structure, keystroke latency, even syntax. He's running a server farm through a shell nonprofit called Atlas Teach Fund. Looks like an educational grant company on paper. Julian leaned in. But it's not. It's cover for data mining, deep fakes, identity replication testing. Naomi's jaw clenched. He's building the next version. The next morning, Naomi stood in Julian's office, preparing to depart. I'll go to Kingston myself, she said. Quiet, solo. I don't want him spooked. Julian frowned. It could be a trap. Naomi met his eyes. It probably is. He stepped forward. You're not invincible. She gave a tired smile. I don't need to be. I just need to be faster than him. Julian hesitated, then reached into his desk and pulled out a small velvet box. Naomi blinked. Is that? He opened it. A pin, cross-text silver and blue, but engraved on the back, in tiny cursive, truth over fear. I had this made the week you took the promotion, he said quietly. Didn't know when I'd give it to you. Naomi took it, her fingers trembling slightly. She pinned it just below her collar. No words were needed. That night, Naomi arrived in Kingston under an alias, driving a rented pickup. She checked into a roadside inn, room 214, with one suitcase and no visible weapons. Her plan was simple: get in, verify the facility, trace the network, copy what she could, and get out. But when she entered the perimeter of the Atlas Teach Fund building at 2:07 a.m., what she found was not a humble server farm. It was a fortified compound. Cameras, guards. Miles wasn't hiding in fear. He was preparing for war, and as Naomi crouched in the shadows, watching the glow from the facility pulse through the trees, her earpiece crackled softly with Jackson's voice. Naomi, you're not gonna like this. We just got a new drop. Her heart tightened. From who? Miles. He released something. A pause. A full identity profile. Of you. From birth to now. Names, addresses, photos, family members, even. He stopped. Even your mother's death certificate. Naomi closed her eyes. He was digging into the deepest wounds now, turning blood into currency. But he'd made a mistake. He thought she'd flinch. Instead, she whispered into the mic. Then it's time to burn it down. Naomi waited until 3:14 a.m. before moving. By then, the guards at the compound's perimeter had completed their third rotation, 2 minutes between each round, one at the front gate, one by the north fence, and one circling the utility shed in the back. Miles had tightened security, but he was still a creature of patterns. Patterns could be broken. She moved like smoke low, silent, unseen, crossing the gravel path behind the solar panels. Her target wasn't the main data center, but the auxiliary substation, the brainstem where every file passed before reaching the core server. Miles had always believed in redundancy. She was counting on it. Jackson whispered in her ear. Thermals show minimal movement inside. No canine units. You've got 7 minutes tops before the next sweep. Copy, Naomi breathed. She reached the side entrance, bypassed the fingerprint pad with her override chip, and slipped inside. The room smelled of soldered wires and faint ozone. Racks of routers blinked steadily, unaware that war had entered their home. She connected her drive, and the interface lit up like a Christmas tree. Dozens of files. Some familiar, but some new. Project Resurrection. Persona Vault. Naomi Reed. Synthetic Naomi V3. 2. In progress. Her breath hitched. She clicked into the vault. Photos of her. Recordings. AI training files every moment she'd spoken publicly since arriving at Crosstech. Every camera clip. Every phone call. Every whisper she thought had vanished into the wind. Miles had built a copy of her. A synthetic Naomi. Voice, mannerisms, expressions, a tool to frame her in future scandals, to erase her from reality and replace her with a programmed echo. Naomi stared at the interface, a chill racing down her spine. He hadn't just wanted to break her. He wanted to rewrite her. Jackson's voice snapped her back. "You've got 4 minutes. You need to move." Naomi transferred the data. Her hands trembled not with fear, but with fury. She activated the ghost drive, a digital smoke bomb that would trigger random false signals across the server, masking her access. Then, just as she reached for the final directory, a door slammed. Footsteps. Close. Naomi yanked the drive, slipped behind a storage rack, and held her breath. 2 guards entered, speaking in low tones. She said the camera loop reset too fast. Wants us to double-check. Boss is getting paranoid again. Wouldn't you be? After she burned his last vault? Their footsteps faded toward the far side. Naomi exhaled silently, then slipped out the side exit. By the time she reached the tree line, the alarm lights behind her flashed red. Too late. She was already gone. Back at the Kingston Motel, Naomi opened the files one by one. Jackson was on video call from HQ, eyes wide. "This isn't just sabotage," he said. "This is legacy erasure. He's planning to make your synthetic clone the only Naomi that survives online. He's working with digital historians, data purgers. He's even drafting a death certificate." Naomi stared at the screen, her voice low. "He wants me to vanish. Not physically, but digitally. Permanently." Jackson leaned forward. "You stop this now, or he finishes you in ways people won't even see." Naomi sat still. Then she clicked a folder titled Deployment Timeline. There, outlined in clean, bullet point format, was the schedule. October 3rd, Iniziate online disinformation campaign. October 6th, leak Naomi voicemail to implicate insider trading. October 9th, publish Naomi read exposé via Shell News site. October 9th, public obituary. Naomi whispered, "He's going to kill me online in 4 days." By sunrise, she was back at the estate. Julian met her at the back entrance, still in a dark robe, coffee in hand. "Naomi," she interrupted him with a look. "Forget defense. We go offensive now." He nodded slowly. "Tell me everything." They sat in his private study, doors locked, blinds drawn. Naomi laid out the files, the voice models, the digital puppet Miles had built. Julian's face hardened as he scrolled through a clip, her voice, perfectly mimicked, saying things she never said. "He's going to make you confess to crimes you didn't commit," he muttered. "He'll say you leaked our tech, that you seduced me for power, that you sold secrets." Naomi nodded. "He'll make it believable, because people don't question what they want to believe." Julian looked up. "So we take him down before October 9th. Naomi stood. "No, on October 9th. He frowned. "Why wait?" "Because we turn his weapon against him." She pointed at the synthetic Naomi files. "He wants the world to believe I died disgraced. Instead, we use this to make him confess." Julian blinked. "Deepfake him?" Naomi nodded. "Just enough to bait him. We leak his synthetic voice admitting everything. The vaults, the framing, the kill switch on me. Then we time the real files to drop immediately after." Jackson's voice came over speaker. "You're playing a dangerous game, Naomi." She stared at the screen. "I'm done playing. I'm rewriting the ending." Over the next 3 days, Naomi and Jackson worked like surgeons. They crafted a synthetic voice file of Miles impeccably rendered, using his own training samples. It was short, 30 seconds, just enough to make the world pause. She was never supposed to make it this far. Naomi was a problem I intended to erase completely. Then came the build-out of the real file drop, thousands of documents, contracts, server logs, financial trails, all verified, all traceable to Miles. And on October 9th, Naomi scheduled it all. 1 click, set to launch at 9 a.m. But as she stared at the screen the night before, her phone buzzed. A private number. She answered. A voice, calm, smooth, too calm. "You always were clever, Naomi. Miles, you built a beautiful trap," he said. "But remember this, if I go down, I don't go alone." She didn't respond. He chuckled. "You think you've erased fear, but fear is what built you." And then, see you in the obituary. The line went dead. Naomi stared at the phone, then at the clock. 8:12 p.m., 13 hours to go. She walked to the mirror, stared at her own reflection. Was she the maid? The bodyguard? The executive? The target? No, she was the storm. And tomorrow, the storm would speak. October 9th, 8:59 a.m. The city was waking slowly, the sky bruised by early autumn clouds, as Naomi sat in Julian's private command suite. Her finger hovered above the keyboard, one keystroke away from igniting the most public reckoning cross-tech, and perhaps the tech world, had ever seen. Julian stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back. He didn't speak, but his presence was steady, solid. Jackson's voice came through her earpiece. We're green across all nodes. Secure IP relay. Mirror servers online. You hit it, there's no undo. Naomi exhaled. Release it, she whispered. 9 a.m. The world changed. Across major news platforms, forums, and whistleblower channels, a wave of truth exploded like a digital tsunami. At first, it was the audio. Miles Stroud's synthetic confession, delivered with icy precision. Naomi Reed was never meant to survive. I built her echo. She was useful, until she became inconvenient. Then came the documents. File after file. Contracts between shell companies and cyber espionage firms. Video footage of Miles coordinating the framing campaign. Bank transfers routed through foreign accounts to silence dissent. Drafts of Naomi's resignation letter, never sent, never written by her. And finally plans to replace Naomi with a fully synthetic version, erasing her from every server, every record, every story. By 9:15 a.m., Naomi Reed was the #1 global search term. By 9:30 a.m., Miles Stroud was trending with it, alongside words like traitor, fraud, digital assassin, and by 10 a.m., federal warrants were reactivated. Interpol put out an alert. Stroud's last known alias, Mark Varan, was now the target of a multinational manhunt. Naomi didn't smile. She just closed her laptop. At 11:02 a.m., she stepped outside the Crosstech headquarters into the chilled autumn light. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted. But they didn't shout at her like before. They didn't scream rumors. They asked questions like, Miss Reed, what gave you the courage to speak? Do you believe justice will catch him? What do you want people to remember most about today? She paused, then answered only one. I want people to remember that the truth still matters. Even when it's whispered. Even when it's inconvenient. Even when someone tries to delete it. Meanwhile, in a cafe 2 miles away, a woman named Ruth Martinez was monitoring encrypted channels. The chatter had shifted. Fear was spreading across circles that once felt untouchable. Naomi hadn't just burned Miles, she'd exposed the entire ecosystem that enabled him. Whispers about a woman who started as a maid and nearly got written out of existence. Now they were whispering something else. She couldn't be erased. Back at the estate, Julian poured them both a glass of bourbon. The late afternoon light cast long shadows across the hardwood floor, painting the room with quiet gold. Naomi swirled her glass slowly. I used to think if I could survive long enough, I'd finally be free of all this. Julian looked at her. And are you? She shook her head. Not free. Just. Clear. There's a difference. Julian took a slow sip. You made something that will last, Naomi. More than headlines. You gave people permission to fight back. No. She looked out the window, toward the ridge where a camera once spied on their quiet mornings. I didn't want to be a symbol, she said. You didn't have to, Julian replied. They made you one. You just refused to let them choose what it meant. Naomi's jaw tightened. He's still out there. Julian didn't deny it. But he's smaller now. He's afraid. She looked at him, serious. He doesn't get to disappear, Julian nodded. Then we find him. But now we're not chasing shadows, we're hunting truth. That night, Naomi sat on her porch alone. The wind moved through the trees like a quiet hymn. Her phone buzzed. An email. No subject. No body. Just a single attachment. A photo. Grainy. Miles. Somewhere hot. Desert sun in the background. A cracked wall behind him. A corner of a Moroccan street sign just barely visible. There was something in his eyes. Not just arrogance. Desperation. like a man who knows he's hunted. Naomi stared at it for a long moment, then deleted it. He wanted her to chase, but she wasn't playing his game anymore. He could run. She would build, because that was the real victory. She had survived. She had been seen. She had refused to vanish. And now, she belonged to herself. 6 months later, the snow had finally melted off the Crosstech property. Buds were beginning to crown the edges of the trees, and robins had returned to the garden Naomi once tended. The house was quieter now, no press, no guards pacing the perimeter, no hidden eyes behind shadows. But inside the mansion, a new kind of movement had taken hold. Purpose, peace, rebuilding. Naomi stood in the east hallway, dressed in a tailored navy suit, her silver badge glinting under the light chief of security and ethics. 6 months into the role, and her presence had not just shifted the culture of Crosstech, it had redefined it. Employees no longer whispered about the maid who made it. Now, they came to her office seeking counsel, guidance, mentorship. She had become a quiet monument. That afternoon, a quarterly summit gathered in the main auditorium. Julian stood at the podium, poised and steady, but the crowd's eyes often flicked to the front row where Naomi sat, composed and still, like a lighthouse in a sea of polished suits. Julian opened his remarks with unexpected simplicity. When I lost control of this company, it wasn't because of technology, or money, or even sabotage. It was because I stopped listening to the truth. And the truth didn't come from my board. It didn't come from a consultant. It came from someone who never asked for power, only respect. He turned to Naomi, and she earned both. The room stood in applause. Naomi didn't smile for show. She nodded, once, then stood, steady as stone, and joined him on stage. Later that evening, after the summit, Naomi sat on the back steps of the mansion. No cameras, no microphones, just the wind and the scent of old pine. Julian joined her, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. Same porch, he said, but a very different season. Naomi chuckled softly. You still put too much sugar in this. He smiled. Some things don't change. She sipped the coffee, then looked up at the dark sky. I've been thinking about what's next, she said. Julian stilled. Leaving? Becoming. He tilted his head. I've been offered a federal consulting position, she continued. Oversight on AI ethics and surveillance law. Jackson recommended me. Julian didn't look surprised. And you're torn. Naomi nodded. I don't want to walk away from what we built. You're not walking away, he said. You're widening the circle. She stared at him. That night, when Alicia slapped me, when you believed her, not me, I thought I'd never come back from that. Julian's voice was soft. I know, but I did, she whispered. He nodded slowly. You did. She turned to face him fully. You want the truth? Always. I never stayed here because I trusted the company. I stayed because I wanted to believe one man could change. Julian looked at her, searching her eyes. And did I? She didn't answer right away. Then finally, yes. No. 2 weeks later, Naomi stood before her staff for the final time. Some of you knew me when I wore a name tag. Not a title, she began. Some of you knew me only as a headline, or a rumor, or someone to be skeptical of. But here's what I know now, truth doesn't ask for belief. It just endures. She glanced around the room, and those who protect it, they don't always look like what you expect. Sometimes they're women, sometimes they're black, sometimes they're invisible until they choose not to be. Silence, then a standing ovation. She left the estate quietly that night. No farewell party, no dramatic exit, just a single suitcase, and a future wide open. 1 year later, a news article circulated through professional circles. Naomi Reed appointed National Ethics Advisor for AI Oversight Commission. Below the headline, a photo, Naomi, standing at a podium in Washington, D.C., flanked by scientists, lawmakers, and community leaders. She looked taller than before, not in stature, but in presence. And below the photo, a quote. Her quote, I wasn't erased. I evolved. Miles Stroud was never caught. Whispers placed him in Istanbul, then South Africa, then quietly living on a private island, under a new face and name. But his reach had dwindled. His investors turned. His silence was bought by his own irrelevance. And Naomi? She became the one thing he never predicted. Resilient, remembered, and free. Late one night, back at the Crosstech estate, Julian stood on the same porch where she once declared war on erasure. He looked out at the stars, alone, a quiet smile playing at his lips. He raised a glass toward the empty chair beside him, to the woman who wouldn't vanish, and in the wind, as the leaves rustled gently, it felt like the universe nodded back. This story teaches us that truth, no matter how deeply buried or threatened, has the power to rise when someone chooses to stand for it. Naomi's journey from a voiceless maid to a national voice of justice shows that resilience is not about being unbreakable, but about rising each time you're told to disappear. In a world that often tries to silence those on the margins, her courage reminds us, you don't need to shout to be heard sometimes. Quiet integrity is louder than any lie.